No one in the courtroom expected what happened next. Not from her, the woman who stepped inside wearing a tailored charcoal coat, pearl earrings, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from a lifetime of never hearing the word no. But the moment she stood before Judge Frank Caprio, something shifted. A hush rolled through the room. Even the fluorescent lights above seemed to dim, as if the world itself sensed a reckoning approaching. And then, without warning, she said the sentence that made the entire courtroom stiffen. "Your Honor, what if we settle this privately?" The words hung in the air, dangerous, heavy, and deeply out of place. Judge Caprio lifted his eyes slowly, and the room held its breath. What happened next would freeze the courtroom. Her name was Claire Remington, 27 years old, clean criminal record, and daughter of billionaire industrialist Marcus Remington, a man whose name alone echoed through Wall Street like thunder across a valley. The charge was simple on paper: 3 parking violations, 2 failure to appear notices, and 1 citation for reckless operation. But something felt wrong from the moment she stepped inside. Her hands trembled slightly, betraying the calm expression she tried to maintain. Her eyes flickered around the courtroom, restless, searching, almost panicked. People whispered, "Is that the Remington girl? Why is she even here? Her family owns half the city. This is going to be interesting." Judge Caprio sensed it too. There was an unusual tension in the air, not arrogance, not entitlement, but fear. Real fear. Claire stood stiffly at the podium, clutching the citation papers like they were burning her fingers. Behind her, the courtroom clerk glanced at Caprio, silently acknowledging something was off, something we couldn't see yet. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, hands folded, eyes soft but alert. He had seen thousands of faces over the years, faces worn by struggle, by poverty, by loss, by regret. He had seen anger, defiance, despair, and shame. But the expression he saw on Claire was something rare enough to make him pause. A woman trying desperately not to fall apart. He cleared his throat gently. "Good morning, Miss Remington," he said, his voice warm but steady. "Please, take your time, we're not in a rush." His words were simple, but they landed on her like mercy. His internal voice, though, whispered something more layered. "She's not here because of parking tickets. There's a story buried under every tremble of her hands. We just have to find it with patience." This was Caprio's quiet gift, not just applying the law, but reading the soul standing before him. He watched her inhale slowly. He noticed a flicker of relief. And then he knew. This case was going somewhere heavy. Somewhere human. But Claire didn't speak immediately. She blinked quickly, as if holding back tears. Judge Caprio waited. Finally, she said, "Your Honor, I know who I am. I know what people assume about me." She swallowed hard. "But I'm not here because I think I'm above the law. I don't know what else to do." A ripple moved through the courtroom. People leaned in subtly. Caprio nodded. "Start from the beginning," he said softly. "We'll take it step by step." She hesitated, then exhaled. "My father," she began, "has always told me that every problem has a price, that anything can be fixed." Her voice cracked at the edges. "And for most of my life, I believed him." Another quiet stir in the courtroom. She continued. "When my mother passed away last year, everything changed. My father became colder, angry, demanding. He said he needed me to toughen up. That weakness was unacceptable. That Remingtons don't make mistakes." Her hands tightened around the papers. "So when I got the tickets, I hid them. I was scared. I didn't tell anyone. Then the notices came, and then the reckless operation charge." She breathed shakily. "But I wasn't being reckless, Your Honor. I was driving my mom's old car. The brakes gave out. I was on my way to her cemetery, and I panicked." A woman in the back row covered her mouth, stunned. Claire's voice softened until it was barely audible. "I haven't been okay since she died. And my father, he doesn't believe in therapy. He believes in reputation. So when he found out about the summons yesterday, he said—" She hesitated. Blinking tears. He said, "Handle it, whatever it costs." Now the courtroom understood. Her fear wasn't of the fine. It was of going home. Judge Caprio tapped his pen lightly, a gesture everyone recognized as his thinking signal. "Miss Remington," he said gently, "I want you to look at me." She lifted her eyes, red and wavering. "Did you come here today because you wanted to solve the problem, or because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't?" She hesitated. "Both," she whispered. "And when you said, 'settle this privately,' what did you mean?" She closed her eyes. I thought maybe money could make this go away. Not because I want special treatment, Your Honor, please believe me, but because it's the only solution I've ever been taught." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "I do believe you." A collective exhale swept through the courtroom, quiet, stunned. "Tell me," he added softly, "what would your mother say if she were here today?" The question hit her like a breaking wave. "My mother," Claire whispered, "would tell me to face my mistakes, to speak the truth, to stop letting fear run my life." "And are you ready to do that?" Caprio asked. She inhaled deeply. "Yes," she said. For the first time, she sounded certain. Judge Caprio studied her carefully, sensing there was still more. "Miss Remington," he said, "is there something else? Something we haven't talked about yet?" Her lips trembled. "Yes," she whispered, "there is." The courtroom leaned in. "My father didn't want me to come here at all. He told me that if I ever embarrassed the family again, he would cut me off entirely. No home, no support, nothing." Her voice cracked. "And yesterday, when he said that, I realized he wasn't talking about money. He meant he'd cut me off emotionally, completely, like I never existed." A gasp escaped someone in the gallery. Claire wiped her cheeks. "I'm not trying to buy my way out, Your Honor. I'm trying to buy a little time before I lose the only parent I have left." Now, the room was silent, heavy, heartbroken. Judge Caprio felt a familiar ache in his chest, the ache of a father listening to someone else's child cry for help. This is no longer about fines, Caprio thought. This is a young woman standing at the intersection of fear and identity. A woman drowning in expectations she never asked for. A woman whose mistakes are small, but whose loneliness is enormous. He remembered his own mother, her warmth, her gentle corrections, her belief in compassion over punishment. And he wondered, what would she want me to do for this girl trembling before me? He took a deep breath. The courtroom waited. Judge Caprio placed his pen down gently, as if the smallest noise might disturb the fragile emotion filling the room. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, eyes never leaving Claire's trembling form. "Miss Remington," he began, his voice low, warm, and impossibly steady. "The law is a guide, but justice requires understanding the human being standing in front of us." A soft murmur rippled through the gallery. Claire's shoulders shook. Not with arrogance, not with entitlement, but with the fear of someone who had spent her entire life learning how to be strong in all the wrong ways. Caprio continued, "Before I make any decisions, I need to ask you something important, and I want you to answer from your heart." Claire nodded, blinking tears. Judge Caprio asked, "Do you want to change your life? Or do you want to preserve the illusion that everything is fine?" Her breath caught. I want to change," she whispered. "I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. Pretending that being a Remington means I can't be human." The courtroom didn't move, didn't breathe. The judge's face softened, a deep, almost paternal compassion washing over his features. "Good," he said quietly, "because pretending is what got you here. Truth is what's going to get you out." He sat forward, elbows resting on the bench. "I'm not here to punish you for your father's expectations. I'm here to help you take responsibility for your actions, and maybe even for your future." Claire's chin trembled, but she held his eyes. For the first time, she didn't look like a billionaire's daughter. She looked like a lost young woman, trying to step into her own life. Judge Caprio picked up her file, flipping through the citations. "Let's go through these together," he said softly. "You have 3 parking violations. That's straightforward. The failure to appear, Notices. Well, I think we both know those weren't out of arrogance. She nodded. I was terrified. I thought if my dad found out. Caprio raised a hand gently. You don't have to explain fear. Fear does strange things to people. Claire swallowed hard. As for the reckless operation, Caprio continued, you said your mother's car had brake issues? Yes, Claire said. I was restoring it. Slowly. It was her dream car. I didn't realize the brake line had corrosion until... She closed her eyes, reliving it. Until it was too late. Where were you going that day? Caprio asked. A tear spilled down her cheek. To visit her grave, she whispered. It was her birthday. The courtroom fell still. Caprio's face tightened with empathy. That must have been a hard day for you. She nodded, choking back tears. I miss her every day. Everything feels heavier without her. For a moment, the judge said nothing. Emotion flickered through his eyes, a memory, a loss, something deeply personal. Then, gently, grief doesn't follow the rules, Miss Remington. It doesn't care about schedules or tickets or expectations. It can make even the strongest person unravel. She wiped her cheeks, nodding. And how has your father responded to your grief? Caprio asked. The silence that answered was telling. Claire finally whispered, he told me to move on, to focus on the company, to represent the family well. There's no room for sadness in his world. A woman in the courtroom shook her head softly, heartbroken. Judge Caprio inhaled thoughtfully. Your mother, he said, sounds like she was the balance in your life. The person who allowed you to feel human. Claire smiled through tears, a small, fragile smile. She was everything gentle in my world. Judge Caprio tapped the file again, almost rhythmically. Miss Remington, he said, I need to ask you something, and this may feel personal. She nodded nervously. Okay. Are you afraid of your father? Her breath hitched. The question landed like a stone in the middle of her chest. She didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice barely above a tremor, she whispered, yes. Several people in the courtroom exchanged shocked glances. Caprio's expression grew firm but compassionate. Has he ever harmed you? No, she said quickly. Not physically. But, emotionally? Her eyes clouded. His disappointment feels like a punishment. His silence feels like exile. Her voice cracked. And the worst part is, I still want him to be proud of me. Judge Caprio nodded thoughtfully. That isn't unusual, he said gently. Children, even grown ones, crave the approval of their parents. But you cannot build your life around the fear of losing someone who doesn't know how to stay. Claire's lips parted. A soft gasp escaping. The words struck something deep inside her. Judge Caprio looked down at the citations one more time, but his decision wasn't about paper. It was about her soul. He folded his hands. Miss Remington, I've sat in this chair a long time, he began. I've seen people come in here with nothing but the clothes on their back, and I've seen people come in wearing designer coats that cost more than most folks make in a month. He paused. And I've learned one thing. Pain doesn't care about your bank account. Grief doesn't care about your last name. Loneliness doesn't check your tax bracket before it breaks your heart. Claire's eyes welled again. When your mother passed, Caprio continued, you lost your compass. And instead of helping you navigate that loss, the person who should have guided you handed you a life jacket made of money and told you to swim. He shook his head. But money doesn't help you breathe underwater. It only sinks you faster. A tear slid down Claire's face. You didn't try to buy your way out because you're arrogant, Caprio said softly. You tried, because that's the only solution you were ever taught. He leaned forward slightly. But you're here today, standing in front of me, not because of who your father is. You're here because of who you're becoming. Claire inhaled shakily. And that, Caprio finished, is far more important. He picked up the citations. Miss Remington, he said, here's what we're going to do. The courtroom froze. Claire braced herself, eyes wide and fearful. But Caprio wasn't rushing. He was deliberate, measured. Your parking violations, I'm dismissing them. A soft gasp spread across the room. And your failure to appear notices? Caprio continued. Given the emotional state you were in and the fear driving your decisions, I'm waiving the penalties. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. As for the reckless operation charge, Caprio said, I'm reducing it to a minimal fine. Something symbolic, something manageable. She blinked, stunned, but I'm not finished. The courtroom leaned forward in unison. Judge Caprio's voice deepened with meaning. Money isn't your punishment, Miss Remington. Your lesson will come from responsibility, not payment. Claire lowered her hand slowly, listening. Instead of additional fines, Caprio said, I'm ordering you to complete 20 hours of community outreach, specifically with young women who feel pressured, frightened, or unheard. Women who need someone to remind them they're allowed to be human. The room remained utterly still. Claire's eyes widened, not in fear, but in recognition. This isn't about your mistakes, Caprio said softly. It's about helping you find your voice, the one your mother would want you to use. Claire whispered, Thank you, Your Honor, thank you. She broke not in shame, but in relief. Judge Caprio offered a gentle nod. We're not done yet, he said kindly. I still have something more to tell you. The courtroom shifted, sensing the emotional conclusion approaching, the wisdom, the human message, the final note that would stay with everyone long after the doors closed. Judge Caprio waited until Claire steadied herself enough to meet his eyes again. Her breathing was uneven, her posture fragile, but something within her had shifted, a softening, a release, a recognition that she was no longer standing alone in the storm. Miss Remington, he said gently, there's one more thing I want you to understand. The courtroom grew unusually silent, as though even the air itself leaned forward to listen. Caprio rested his hands on the bench. You didn't come here today to escape consequences. Not really. You came because, for the first time in a long time, you wanted the truth more than you wanted protection. That takes courage. Claire dropped her gaze, overwhelmed. He continued, You see, courage isn't shouting or standing tall or pretending you're invincible. Courage is walking into a courtroom when your world is falling apart and telling the truth, even when your hands won't stop shaking. Her tears fell freely now. And I want you to remember something, Caprio added softly. Your worth is not measured by your father's approval, your last name, or your family's empire. It's measured by the choices you make when no one is there to applaud them. Claire exhaled shakily. In that moment, she didn't look like the daughter of a billionaire. She looked like a young woman finally meeting the reflection she had run from for years. And today, Judge Caprio said, you made the right choice. A man in the second row wiped his eyes discreetly. A woman near the back nodded slowly, moved by something deeply personal. Even the courtroom officer, a stoic man who'd seen his fair share of human drama, shifted his jaw and blinked rapidly. Claire's voice trembled as she spoke. Your Honor, I don't know how to thank you. Caprio raised a hand gently. No need to thank me. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm doing my job the way I believe it should be done. She swallowed hard. But no one has talked to me like this since my mother passed. Her voice wavered on the last word, nearly crumbling under the weight of memory. Judge Caprio softened. Your mother, he said quietly, would be proud of you today. For standing here, for speaking honestly, for trying. Claire broke again, shoulders trembling. The courtroom felt like a sanctuary, a rare place where vulnerability didn't feel like weakness. Then something unexpected happened. Claire whispered, Your Honor, may I tell you something I've never said out loud? Caprio nodded. Of course. She took a shaky breath. My mother, she used to watch your cases online. Every morning. She loved the way you treated people. She'd say, this is what justice looks like when it has a heart. Gasps scattered quietly through the room. Claire continued, when she got sick, and I was taking care of her, she'd watch your clips to stay calm. She said your voice made her feel safe. Her tears fell harder now, and after she died, I couldn't watch anything. I couldn't hear anything that reminded me of her. She looked up at him, eyes trembling. But today, hearing you speak, it felt like she was here with me. Judge Caprio froze. For a moment, a rare, fragile moment, emotion cracked through his seasoned composure. His eyes glistened, and his lips pressed together in a tender line. He took a slow, deep breath. "Miss Remington, your mother sounds like a remarkable woman," he said quietly. "And the fact that she found comfort here, in this little courtroom, humbles me more than you know." Silence settled like a warm blanket over the room. He gave a small, thoughtful nod, the kind he gave when speaking from a deeper place. "Let me tell you something I've learned over the years," he began. "Life doesn't give us warnings. It doesn't schedule heartbreak. It doesn't grant us extra time with the people we love." He paused, letting the words sink. "And when loss finally arrives, it shakes every part of us. It changes the way we walk, the way we breathe, the way we see ourselves." Claire listened, breath held. "But grief," he said, "is not an enemy. It's a reminder of love, of connection, of the parts of our heart that were shaped by someone else's kindness." His voice deepened with meaning. "You're not in this courtroom because you failed. You're here because you're trying to find footing again in a world that hasn't felt steady since the day your mother left." Claire nodded, tears falling silently. "And, if she were here," Caprio continued, "I believe she'd tell you what I'm about to say. You are allowed to break. You are allowed to be human. You are allowed to start over." A soft cry escaped Claire's lips. "And Miss Remington," he added gently, "you are allowed to build a life that belongs to you, not to anyone else's expectations." The room was still reverent, emotional, transformed. Judge Caprio reached for his gavel. "For the record," he said steadily, "all parking violations are dismissed." He tapped the papers lightly. "The failure to appear penalties are waived." Another breath. "The reckless operation charge is reduced to a symbolic fine of $50. Claire let out a breath she'd been holding for days. "And finally," Caprio said, "you will complete 20 hours of community outreach. Not because you need to pay society, but because someone out there might need to hear your story the way you needed to tell it today." A final, gentle nod. "Case dismissed." He brought the gavel down, but no one moved. Not Claire, not the gallery, not even the court officer. It was as though the gavel had struck, not just wood, but something deep inside every person present. Claire stood there, shaking, overwhelmed, her eyes full of tears, but also full of something new. A hint of hope. She whispered, barely audible, "Thank you for seeing me." And Judge Caprio, with a softness that felt like a father speaking to his own child, replied, "I saw you because you showed up. Remember that." As Claire walked out of the courtroom, slow, steady, lighter than when she entered, a quiet realization settled over everyone watching. Some people come to court to avoid punishment. Others come to face it. But the rarest ones come to face themselves. And that day, in a small courtroom in Providence, a billionaire's daughter didn't learn how to escape consequences, she learned how to breathe again. A narrator-like closing tone enters. In the end, justice isn't just about laws. It's about humanity. About choosing compassion when the world expects judgment. About seeing the person behind the mistake. And on that morning, Judge Frank Caprio reminded everyone present and everyone who would one day watch this story that sometimes the most powerful verdict isn't the one recorded on paper, but the one delivered straight to the heart.